Alright everybody, welcome back to the video. Today's video has long been on my mind. I'd like to do a Jon Jones expose video. I know Guru's already done that, but we're not talking about that today. We're talking about why Jon Jones is the most overrated fighter of all time. It's worse than you think, guys. There's a lot of evidence here. We're going to go through a lot of things here, so let's break it down. First of all, we're going to start out with the failed PED test, strictly on paper, Anthony Smith style. So Jon Jones has been popped for PEDs not once but twice, and that's purely on paper. Only failing for PEDs in this context. We'll get into some other things, some anecdotal evidence of his PED usage, which does include other drug tests, and we'll get into those. But the test he failed on paper were tested USC 214 and USC 232, and this is a favor from Dana, proving his Dana white privilege, which was one thing I was going to do, but a lot of guys have it, so it's not fair to knock him for it. But let's just give an example of it here. The location of 232 was moved because pretty much Jon Jones failed. A lot of drug tests. It was pretty clear he was on steroids for that Gus rematch, so they moved a location, which I don't think it's ever been done in the history of the UFC for a fighter to be moved to a different location so they wouldn't get suspended for their PED use. I can't think of another example. If you can in the comments, please enlighten me, because I guarantee you, actually don't guarantee you, I'm 99% sure there's not. Alright, here's an anecdotal evidence. This is a testimony from the man, the myth, the legend, the GOAT, Chael Sonnen, about his Jon Jones fight and the PED. There we go. A little laggy, but finally it's working.
Do you think he was clean against you?
No, heavens
no.
I had more juice than Tropicana, and he pushed me around like a Mack truck versus.
Did they not test
as
for
soon
that?
As we locked up with each other, I thought, ooh, I know you. As he's pushing me backwards before he was spinning elbow, I remember thinking, I know your secret because I got the same one.
All right, another piece of anecdotal evidence is the testing agents, I guess that they're called, for testing Jon Jones during the first Daniel Cormier fight, which he failed the drug test for cocaine, reported that his testosterone levels were alarmingly low, which is a sign of steroid use when your body struggles to naturally produce testosterone because it's relying on all the other things you're putting in to give it testosterone, and hence why you have low levels. Due to PED suspicions and the failed drug test, the fight was overturned to a no contest, and this is a direct quote from an article from the agent. Typically, without using drugs with black males, 50 to 150 would be the normal range for testosterone. Compared to Jon Jones, came back his highest level was 4.9. Even on the low end, he's only got 10% of that. It's really, really low. Conte continued. It wasn't just that one time. The first part of December, when he tested again the second time, it's still relatively low. Those are, in my opinion, just highly suspicious. Very, very low levels. Another piece of anecdotal evidence is that another drug test that he failed this time was for clomiphene, which is an estrogen blocker, because you don't want estrogen if you're going to be on steroids. You want all the testosterone you can get, and letrozone, which is used for women with breast cancer. Which, why would Jon Jones be using that? It's also for erectile dysfunction, apparently. Which, again, why would Jon Jones be needing that if he's a world-class athlete who should have enough testosterone to get it up? He should have enough. Now, these substances, USADA deemed them as hormone and metabolic modulators, which in simple layman terms are used to mask the presence of PEDs. So on paper, there is no PEDs, but anecdotally, using substances to try to hide the fact that he was on PEDs or enhance the ability of PEDs, hence the modulator. And given his track record, USADA was very suspicious around these failed tests. Another piece of anecdotal evidence is a Freudian slip where Jon Jones admitted to using steroids through the Freudian slip. Let us watch. Hopefully it'll load, and we can enjoy, I guess.
And just to close this chapter with Daniel Cormier, I don't even know why it was such a big thing in the first place. I beat him fair and square the first time and off of steroids, and I beat him the second time off of steroids. So, it's...
Okay, so now I have to explain what a Freudian slip means. If my slides will advance, please, for the Jon Jones fans that don't understand what a Freudian slip is. So a Freudian slip, in this context, basically saying he beat him fair and square the first time, which implies the second time that he cheated. A Freudian slip is, the quote is, I almost invariably discover disturbing influence in the addition which comes from something outside the intended utterance, And the disturbing element is either a single thought that has remained unconscious, which manifests itself in the slip of the tongue. Also, that little pause there where Jon Jones realized, oops, I accidentally admitted to being on steroids. So that's a little bit of an issue. You guys can do with that what you will. Another piece of anecdotal evidence, there's a great video for more plates, more dates, but for some reason my YouTube wasn't working when I tried to put it in. But during the fight week build up to the Anthony Smith fight, the Nevada State Athletic Commission informed Anthony Smith that Jon Jones had failed every single drug test that he took during the drug testing period. But Anthony Smith somehow ended up taking the fight and still fighting Jon Jones. Who knows why? Maybe because Dana just pushed it under the rug or something. Maybe not. All right, now we're going to break down the Jon Jones age gap thing. And questionable, I won't say records of his opponents, but track records of his opponents. So Andre Guzmão, 10-year age gap, 3-0 his last fights. This was his first fight in the UFC and one of his only 2 fights in the UFC. Stephan Bonner, 10-year age gap, 2-1 in his last 3. Can't argue with that. Jake O'Brien, 1-2 in his last 3. Not so good. Brandon Vera, 10-year age gap, not so good. 2-1 in his last 3, though. Can't really argue with that. This one's very interesting. I'm not going to pronounce this correctly. Vladimir Matyushenko. There you go. 16-year age gap, and he was 3-0 in his last 3 fights. 16-year age gap is absurd. You can't even tell me you found a 38-year-old man to fight him. You can't find somebody younger than that. Really? Given this isn't they're non-title fights. We'll get into title fights in a second. And then Ryan Bader, 4-year age gap, 3-0 in his last 3. Now for title fights, we're going to go in depth. So Shogun Rua, 6-year age gap, and he's 2-1 in his last 3. Rampage Jackson was a 9-year age gap, 2-1 in his last 3. Naoto Machida, also 9-year age gap, was 1-2 in his last 3. Rashad Evans, 8-year age gap, 3-0 in his last 3. Do you see what I'm trying to say here? That Jon Jones fights old men, and it reaches a point when you're 25 years old for like the Rampage and the other title defenses and Rashad's. Well, no, be 24 on the time. I feel like you reach a certain point where you really can't find a contender that's within 4 years of your age. When you're 24 or 25, you're telling me you can't find. In the UFC, it's supposed to be this talent-rich organization. Vitor Belfort, 10-year age gap. Also, Vitor Belfort fought Jon Jones on short notice. Interesting, isn't it? 2-1 in his last 3. Chael Sonnen, 11-year age gap, 1-2 in his last 3. Gustafsson, very close fight for John, 3-0 his last 3. Glover Teixeira, 8-year age gap, was 3-0 in his last 3. So he's got some stuff there. DC, 8-year age gap, 3-0 in his last 3. OSP, close fight for John, 4-year age gap, 2-1 in his last 3. Daniel Cormier, again, 8-year age gap, 3-0 in his last 3. Alexander Gustafsson, same age again. This one was steroids. So 2-1 in his last 3. Interesting, though, steroids for a guy your age. Now, here's where we get a little different. Things Anthony Smith, who we know isn't that great at fighting. If you know, you know. -1 year age gap. So what I mean by that when I say -1 is that Jon was actually, or Anthony Smith was actually, Jon was older than Anthony Smith. My bad. I had to use my brain there for a second. 2-1 in his last 3. Thiago Santos, 4-year age gap, 3-0 in his last 3. Dominic Reyes was 2 years younger than Jon. Very close fight. We'll get to that eventually. 3-0 in his last 3. Cyril Gahn, 3 years younger than Jon. 2-1 in his last 3, and then Stipe with a long layoff, 5-year age gap, and 2-1 in his last 3, including a brutal knockout. Interesting, isn't it? Now, I gave some leniency here for being the youngest champion ever, which is fair, but it reaches a certain point, like I said earlier, where it gets hard to use that argument when you're like 25 fighting 36-year-olds. You're telling me there wasn't a single 28 to 30-year-old that range, even like 31, 32, contender deserving at the time of a title shot. I know it's like a meaningless stat. My stat teacher said you can't really average out age, but the average age gap of all of Jon Jones' title defenses combines for 67 years. 67 years on a quote-unquote average, or generally speaking. It's a 7 to 8 year age gap of all his title defenses. Does no one find it concerning that he's facing like a whole senior citizen can be made of your title fight age gaps? That's very weird. I don't think you're that good if you're beating up old men on steroids, as we've established before. Now, this is a graph displaying the age gaps of Jon Jones' opponents. You can take a brief look at it if you want to see. I think visually it would make more sense than just words on a slideshow. That should be enough to look at it now. Next thing, this fake baddest men on the planet mentality. Jon's taken 1 short notice fight in his career, and that was his debut against Andre Guzmão. Other than that, he's taken 0. He always says, I need these long camps to do this and that, but you can't be the baddest man on the planet, because he's claimed that. And Dana's claimed that. Everybody says that. He's this guy, you walk into a room, Jon to leave in the room, but no, he needs prep time in order to get in the room, so not really the baddest man on the planet. And you're going to argue, well, it's nitpicking, but you can't claim yourself to be the baddest man on the planet, this unstoppable, undeniable GOAT, if you're too afraid to fight on short notice. I mean, let's fly back to Dan Henderson, right? Dan Henderson pulls out due to an injury, and the baddest man on the planet, in air quotes, refused to fight the number 11 contender in middleweight. That's not even Jon's division. That's a division below him on short notice without prep time. That's crazy. You should run through the guy. He's not even ranked in your division, and he's not even ranked top 10 in his own division, let alone like top 5. Weird, isn't it? Now, ducking. This is another common pattern in Jon Jones' career. I have 6 examples of the ducking so far, and there's probably more. John's first case of ducking was Rumble Johnson. That's the first one. Then he ducked Jan Blachowicz. Then he didn't give Reyes an immediate rematch, which was a duck. He ducked him from the immediate rematch, which was a very close fight. And given the standard for close fights, an example around that time frame was Max Holloway and Volkanovski. The first fight was close. They gave a second one. You know what I mean? And they took 3 years off to book up Francis Ngannou, except he never actually fought Francis Ngannou. Weird, isn't it? Then he didn't fight Sergey Pavlovich, which was on a massive win streak when he was a champion. And do I even need to explain this whole Aspinall ducking? I think anybody that even knows the name Jon Jones knows that he's been ducking Aspinall for a couple months now and wrote a Twitter thread about it. Anyways, fouling and dirty tactics. While current day exact stats on fouls are hard to find, Jon Jones is a known eye poker and other like the oblique kick, the groin shots, all kinds of other things. He's got numerous notable examples of fouls, including the I forgot to put disqualification against Matt Hamill, and then the illegal knee. John threw at Anthony Smith, which got a 2-point deduction. And if it weren't for Smith continuing, he would have ended with a DQ loss, which, like I said earlier, is the second of his career. You have 2 DQ losses. You are not the go, buddy. You're cheat. You're dirty. That's straight up facts. Another thing, rule makers had to develop methods to prevent Jon Jones from cheating. That's how bad cheating got. Does no one find this concerning? They're supposed to be the greatest of all time, but you're also the greatest cheater of all time. To the point where rule makers like John McCarthy, ref now rule maker, had to make it illegal simply to stick out your arm, your hand on your opponent's face. Jon Jones was covering people. Do it right now to yourself. Put your hand over your face with your eyes. I just did it there. My audio might sound cooked. Do it. See what your view looks like. You get nothing. Nothing. There's like no view. You can't even see your peripheral. It makes it very easy to hit people and they can't see what's going on. You're blinding your opponents because you can't hit them naturally. So yeah, that's something that's very interesting to think about. These are the exact stats as of July 2018. This is before the Anthony Smith fight. So we have 19 fouls, 33 warnings, 1 deduction, and 7 breaks, breaking the action from grappling. These are a little stick-figure drawings of all times. The eye pokes, the groin shots, all that stuff. Fence grabbing as well. It's pretty interesting here. You can see lots of stuff going on there. I don't really know. I'm just going to let you look at it again. Here's some more visuals. I think it's going to be a video where you have to listen a lot, but I'm also put some visuals in there because Jones fans don't really have brain cells. So that's how it goes. This roof is working on my house. Okay, here's Jon Jones admitting to illegally eye-poking opponents. He's admitting, and he has no sort of remorse for it. He's very open about it. He's giggling. Oh, I just eye-poke people. It's so funny. Oh, no, load in a second. Why did it just go next slide? My bad. This has been been slow, janky, but trust me, if you pay attention, you suffer through it, it'll work. All right, let's get it going here. Do we even need the video? You guys know he's an eye poker. I don't even know why we need the video, but we'll play it anyways. Work with me. Finally working with me.
Cormier is saying before the fight that I'll end up poking him in the eyes at some point. And the reason why he says that is because I do poke people in the eyes, and it's very illegal, but I do it.
Look at him, smiling and giggling about it, like a little kid. You're committing fouls. You're a dirty fighter, man. You're giggling about it. No remorse, no contrition. Right there. Very clear. Oh, this was going to be fun. You already kind of saw the spoiler for the next slide, but it's going to be a fun one because this is where Jones fans get very mad. But I'm in a Reyes fight. Here we go. They're already commenting. They're all whining already. They're getting it ready. In a fight where Reyes won on the stat sheet in the eyes of the fans and Dana White included. You can find the video, guys. I don't know what's on my YouTube. I wasn't in certain videos. The exact quote from Dana White, and I'll take this to court, is I had it 3-1 Reyes going into the final round. So that implies he won 3-2. Many media members also agree with that. It felt like the only 3 humans on planet Earth were the judges. Sorry, only 3 humans on planet Earth who disagreed with the notion that Reyes won 3-2 were the judges. So it felt like Jon even admitted that Reyes gave him a run for his money and even said he pondered retiring from MMA after the fight. The baddest man on the planet, in air quotes, retiring because someone beat him that bad. Reyes outstruck Jones, which should have been a 3-2 decision win, but ended up on the losing side in one of the most high-profile robberies. If you ask anybody, it's probably the biggest robbery. Statistically speaking, it's Matt Hamill was like 90-10 in MMA decisions, but that's a separate issue. See, MMA decisions, here we go. This is a great source to look at fights and whether they're robbed or not, determining because it's accumulates statistics over time of the fans who actually watch the fights and know the fights. It isn't just random people. As we can see here, 76.3% of people scored it to Reyes and 21% scored it to Jon Jones. I don't know if you need more evidence than that. When beyond 51% score it to Reyes. It's very clear that Reyes won. Now, I'm going to include the media scores for this one just to prove to people that my notion of the three judges only agreeing with it is pretty much true. I mean, look at the amount of media scores that have it 48-47 Reyes, where it's 48-47 Jones on the other side. It's very clear that even at the time, people were saying Reyes won. It isn't one of these fights where we look back and like, oh, that was a robbery. It's one of those fights where in the now we were like, that was a robbery. Another fight Jones fans don't get happy about is the Thiago Santos fight. An interesting matchup between an aging Thiago Santos whose knee's been destroyed due to an ACL, MCL, PCL, and meniscus injuries, which he fought through to get on this title run. Santos took Jones, who was presumed to be clean during this fight, presumed in air quotes because we don't know, to a very close 3-2 decision win for Jon. I had it initially on my first watch, I'll concede, to Jon. But watch it again because we all know the first watch is never the most reliable. I watched the Reyes fight twice, and I watched this fight twice. 3-2 Santos. I scored round 5 to Santos. You can argue about that. Many fans have it 3-2 Santos today, and it's been labeled as a robbery, but due to Santos' kind of fading into obscurity and losing streak, which is unrelated to Jones, more related to the injuries, and also related to the fact that he might not have actually been that good. Another bad comp Jon Jones has fought there. But I won't talk about the comp, because that's too subjective. That's what the argument will be. Thinking ahead here, but it's a very low-profile robbery. Go to MMAdecisions.com. 53.1% had it, Thiago Santos. 43.9% had it, Jon Jones. That one's a little closer, and I think it's because it's a very low-profile robbery. The Alexander Gustafsson fights, I want to address both. So the first one was a close decision in which many at the time of the decision thought Gus won. The reason why people don't hold this claim in the modern day, I feel, is because the stats greatly skew the notion. Also, punchmaker stats have been totally altered in fights. I mean, go look at the Max Holloway versus Volkanovski 2 fights. Look at the fights. Punch stats live versus punch stats they are on your websites. They've been greatly skewed. It's very possible to fake them. They do it all the time. Another more low-profile skewing was Lupe Godinez against Mackenzie Dern, which is another more low-profile one. Gus was in the driver's seat, man. Jon was pressing and forcing his way into the fight. He looked uncomfortable. He had to go do things, where Gustafsson was just doing things. Things were coming to him. He even took him down. I personally have it 3-2 Gus. I've watched this fight probably 5 times, and I've had it once, which was the first watch, 3-2 Jones. All other 4 times, I've had it 3-2 Gus. There you go. I mean, the next thing is the second fight. When you get caught using PEDs in the rematch to win via KO, which should be a no contest. I mean, look at Gus's shirt. No doping. Everybody knew it was doping. Everybody knew it. At the time, they knew he was on PEDs. The event was moved. And if you go watch Thin's interview for it, he's just like, Jon is fine. But it's like, it's really messed up, bro. You moved an entire event because your guy got popped for steroids. Now, this, like I said, I think it's aged poorly, which is why the numbers are a little bit skewed, but still makes you think. 43.5% have it to Gustafsson, 51.3% have it to Jones. I still think it's interesting. It might make you think a little bit. Everyone I've talked to in my personal life, more anecdotal evidence, has basically said that Gus won the fight. I can't think of anyone who I've actually talked to Jones won. So I know I'm going to find those people now in this video comment section. That's how it goes. I know it's going to be, I tried to make it a little longer, but the longer and longer I talk, the more and more I realize I'm wasting my breath. I think we know by now Jones is an overrated drug cheat, so I didn't even talk about the personal stuff that he's done. We don't even get that. That's just low blows. I don't even talk about the bad comp too. Some of his title defenses aged miserably, and some of the comp was just not that good. But I hope this is a moderately quality expose. Definitely recommend Guru's videos. Guru does a good job of Jon Jones exposés. There's the Jon Jones iceberg video as well, which is very popular. There's tons of Jon Jones exposés, but I wanted to put my hat in the ring a little bit, see what I can do here. But everybody, yeah, thanks for watching, and God bless.